Welcome back to Fast Market on the TD Ameritrade Network. I'm Tom White, and I'm joined by my co-host Kevin Hinks. Markets are relatively flat as we speak. S&P 500 gyrating between positive and negative territory. Let's get to our next guest, and that's going to be Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com, joining us just in time for lunch here, Landon. We're talking restaurants, we're talking pizza. Domino's Pizza. This stock's up about 25% this year, off its all-time highs. It's got earnings tomorrow morning. Option market's priced in about a $31 move either way. But what's your data at LikeFolio showing us here on Domino's at earnings?
Yeah, so Domino's is one of the great stories, right? You know, last week I think I talked about Chipotle, how their CEO turned that company around 6x in 3.5 years. Domino's, you got to go back a little bit, back to March 2010 through June 2018. Patrick Doyle, all he did was 15x the company in that time. So there's a lot of wealth being created by these companies. Huge turnaround by Domino's, and it's been doing fantastic over the last 3 years under their new CEO. So when we look at Domino's, the new kind of leader in pizza, when 15 years ago nobody was ordering. Food tasted terrible. It was unbelievable. So huge turnaround story. And one of the things that we're seeing is pizza's sort of making a comeback. We saw it drop off a little bit. It had a little bit of a spike initially from COVID, but what we actually saw from COVID was people. It used to be if you wanted food delivered, it was pizza, but the lockdown sort of showed everybody there's a lot of different options out there for food delivery through all, Grubhub and all those Uber Eats, whatnot. So they faced a lot of new competition and substitutes. But what we're seeing now is that pizza is starting to make a little bit of a comeback, and Domino's is leading that. So we're showing them with about 47% of market share when it comes to people talking about ordering pizzas, especially among the big chains. And the growth is what's driving that. So you can see here the change in purchase intent over the last 90 days. They're all up. The big three are all up, but Domino's is up about twice as much as the other two. So really doing well. They've grown their share of the pie from 45% last year up to 47% this year. And they're doing it mainly because of what they're doing with carryout. It's a very high margin business. That's 43% of their sales. It's actually flat year over year. Carryout mentions are flat year over year, but you got to remember that is a huge, last year was when everyone was doing carryout and delivery. So the fact that they held that is really big. And so that's actually plus 40% over the normal year, 2019, the easy comp there. So Domino's is doing a lot of things right. Very strong. And, Tom, I know you're going to love this. They're even capable of beating out Papa John's Shaq-a-Roni campaign, which we all know he's the dominant, most greatest basketball player of all time. So the fact that Shaq can't even beat Domino's says a lot about how well Domino's is doing.
All right, Landon, I have a couple really positive things here to say about Domino's. And that is, the first and foremost is, their 2-year numbers, which takes the pandemic volatility out of this situation, is still same-store sales over 2 years up 20%. That is incredible, and that's takes the volatility out. The number two thing I could say is, we live in suburbs of Chicago where pizza is a very local, regional thing. And still, my 2 younger children like Domino's. And in a town like Chicago, for Domino's to still be popular is amazing, but they are. And so the question is, the articles I'm reading about Domino's is how they continue to change around their business model and how they're really seeing the ability to pass higher prices, higher delivery costs, higher cooks, higher prices of that labor on to consumers and still grow sales. And they're talking now, the articles I'm reading, Landon, tell me if you hear this, they're talking about drive-thrus to make it easier and quicker to pick up, almost turning themselves into a fast food pizza restaurant. I'd just like to hear your views on those 3 points that I made about Domino's and everything they're doing.
Yeah, they're an innovation leader. I mean, they looked at themselves, 10 years ago and kind of reinvented the entire company, and it needed to be done. And I think that sort of that courage of innovation and reinvention has stuck with them, and so they're able to innovate and do things that are maybe a little bit risky when it comes to the fact this is a huge company. If it's as a small company, taking risks like this, innovating, it's no big deal. That's what you have to do as a small company. But as a monster company, it can be seen as a little bit risky, and it's a little bit out of the norm to be that innovative. And so they've done a fantastic job with that. I'm not surprised to hear that they're pushing the envelope even further. I would be interested to see what the logistics of a drive-through look like, because you got to have that queue in the right spot. If the guy in front of you's got to wait a few minutes, then you're off. So I think they've got to maybe call Chick-fil-A and figure out how to organize that. But overall, you can see that they're crushing it. I mean, they are the ones that are leading this space, doing extremely well. And I think a lot of it has to do, like you're talking about, with innovation. And right now, this is the time of the year when pizza begins its run through February. This is football season. That's when people are getting the pizza for the most time. All of our data is very seasonal on pizza. It peaks and it's at the highest point on the day of the Super Bowl. College championships just ended at that point. The NFL's championships are happening. And so it builds up into that point, and we're just getting started. You've got basketball starting soon as well. So this is a sports-driven, a TV-watching-driven industry, and it's just getting going right now. And the fact that they've been able to increase their lead over the other two is very significant going into this time of the year.
Yeah, Landon, we're going to go back to this basketball comment because we all know Shaq's maybe top 10, but I'll take Larry Bird, Michael Jordan ahead of him any day of the year. And once they start touting Domino's, maybe I'd actually order it. But living here in Chicago, what's surprising to me is that some of your data showed that even though it was summertime, you're still starting to see that pickup in Domino's. And typically, like you said, it's a late fall into the football season, into the bowl games and such. Is it pretty surprising for you guys to see that data for Domino's continue to dominate a little bit, even though, things are opening up? I don't think people are ordering food in as much during the last 3 months.
Right. No, you're right. I think it's actually kind of shows you the behavior change, right? I mean, if you look at, again, the carryout being up 40% versus 2019 and tied with 2020, that tells me that this was a behavior change. It should have been, if it wasn't a behavior change, it would have been a spike in 2020 and a return to normal, maybe up a little bit versus 2019. But that's not what happened. It was a spike and a change in behavior, and people are doing this now more because they're happy with the product. They like getting it on the way home from work or whatever the reason. So Domino's has changed this. And it's obviously good for the company. This is a much higher margin than hiring a delivery person to go out there and send it off to the customer. I will say, as far as seasonality goes, this is when it starts to uptick. That's what we're seeing, a little bit of a start and an uptick. And it's only going to go up from here. It's going to peak in the first week of February when the Super Bowl comes around, and then it'll drop off for the summer again. That always happens. But you're right. There is this whole new element being thrown into seasonality in that restaurants are open or they're closed. And, keeping up with that is very difficult, and it's going to throw off the seasonality. But I would agree that restaurants reopening should decrease pizza. So if they're able to actually continue to increase despite that happening, that's obviously a very bullish sign.
Landon, we're talking about Domino's Pizza, and really this conversation is focused really on three of the names: Domino's, Pizza Hut, which is part of Yum Brands, and Papa John's. Now the question is, who else is playing in this space? Is there some also rans in this space, or is there any other food products that are starting to chip away at the Domino's or the pizza numbers in general? When you think of food delivery or companies like this with food, who else is popping up on your radar screen at LikeFolio, either pizza or non-pizza, frankly?
Yeah, it's really non-pizza. I think these are the top three when it comes to pizza, but it's really a matter of, I wouldn't say competition, but substitutes. And it's on the fact that Uber Eats, Postmates, DoorDash, all of those, you can get just about any restaurant delivered to you. And so now all of a sudden, pizza, who used to be just if you want food delivered to you at home, it was pizza or maybe Chinese takeout. But now it's anybody and everybody, right? You can get food from just about every company out there, and they don't have to have a delivery service staff of their own. They can partner with these third parties. And so I think the substitute angle is really what's the threat to pizza. It has been for a while. And we've actually, we've expressed a lot of concern in 2020 because of that. Domino's made a bold move not to partner with third parties, to keep their own drivers. I think it has paid off for them. I think they're able to control the happiness narrative. We saw that a lot of companies that did partner with third parties had their happiness hit because of that, because the drivers were late. It was just bad coordination by the delivery company. So Domino was smart and able to control that. A little bit of a bold move when everyone was doing the opposite. So Domino's is smart there, but they do have a ton of, again, I don't know if it's competition or substitution competition where you can order from anyone. So the fact that they're hanging on right now is very, very, very bullish. I think that's strong for them. I believe they report tomorrow morning. We've got an earnings score of a plus 15, pretty low number, slightly bullish. But as you guys mentioned, with the stock off about 10% from all-time highs, I don't mind picking up some shares here ahead of earnings.
All right, positive data seen for the pizza chain Domino's Pizza ahead of their earnings. All right, Landon, appreciate all your content here, except for maybe the Shaq news. Have a great day.